Empower 11, the best of its kind in a highly transformative time. Are you empowered? Ready to turn your life up to 11? Awaken the life of who you are on the inside to match the life you were meant to live on the outside. Empower 11. Now is your time.
Empower 11 Radio. Greetings and welcome to Empower 11 Radio. Today is Wednesday, January 30th. This is our live 1-hour show that we bring to you every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. You're either listening to us live on Spreaker, which is a platform that we come to you on. You can listen to it from the Spreaker website, or you can download the free app onto your iPhone or Android phone. It's Spreaker with a Spreaker, or you can listen to our recorded shows on iTunes. Just go to iTunes and search Empower 11 and you'll find us. For more information, you can always go to empower11.com, and that is the word empower with the number 1.com. Excuse me.
He's losing his voice. I said to him before the show started, I go, you have morning voice, because he hasn't talked to anybody yet today.
Yes. Also, facebook.com/empower11. You can keep up to date on everything that's going on with Empower 11, and make sure you hit like. And also, we love hearing your feedback, so make sure to send your emails to info@empower11.com. I am Jack Voorhees, and I am sitting next to the beautiful and talented, amazing woman of my life. She is the engine in my car. She is the laces on my shoes. She is the buttons on my shirt. She is the moon and the stars. Ann Ribley.
Well, hello there, Jack Voorhees. I'm honored to see you this morning. This is the first time that we've kind of saw each other in the studios today. So you are just such a warm, compassionate, creative genius, and I am honored to be doing this and co-hosting the show with you. Yeah, it's interesting. I said to him, he's been in silent retreat all morning, and this is my first time I saw him, so I said, well, you have morning voice. You ever see this when you call somebody? They've been up like all morning. They're like, are you sleeping? Did I wake you up? It's like,
I've been hiding from the rest of the family because this is highly unusual that the family, many members of the family here are not feeling well. And I've been staying away from all the germ environments.
Well, on the opposite note of it, I've been in the throes of it, and I'm the only one that hasn't been sick this winter.
Well, knock on wood.
Oh, I know what it takes. I know. I understand the principles of health. And
yes, you do. Yes, you do. I mean, you're a very healthy person, and I think I see in our future a whole program about Empower 11 health.
Yeah, there is a lot of fear about health, and I know that there's a level of respect that we can have about keeping clean and not not over inundating the body. But there's also we can abandon fear.
Yeah, but we should also have our children go through some kind of chamber before they come into the house where they're disinfected from all the kids at school. All the kids at school are sick, and I know it's kind of going all over our nation right now.
We're exercising our immunity.
States here.
We're exercising our immunity. It's like exercising the body. The body gets sore. It has different symptoms. We're exercising our immunity.
Right, but that's kind of exercise that doesn't feel so good. You don't get that good soreness after. You're just like, oh, thank God I am no longer sick.
Well, it does make you appreciate when you get to that place of clarity with health again. So, speaking of that appreciation, when you have the weight of something on you, that can really, and you get on the other side of it, you can really appreciate the lightness. So let's talk about the lightness that the show is going to be about, which is a life of zero debt.
Yeah,
this is part 2.
Right. We started last week.
Be sure to catch it.
Yeah, if you haven't heard it, make sure you go back and listen to it. We got some really good feedback on that show. That was... it seemed to like strike to the core of a lot of people. They're like, wow. And we're getting all these messages that, we were taking all these notes and stuff during the radio show. And people we haven't heard from in quite a while. I had no idea they were listening, but it was, it's very cool to know that you've touched somebody. Speaking of that, I want to thank everybody that has been instrumental in my whole recovery process. For those of you that don't know, I've been sober now for 15 years. That was on January 25th. I celebrated 15 years of sobriety, and there's many people out there that I am very thankful for. Who have helped me along the way. It has been at times a roller coaster, but not quite the roller coaster that I was experiencing when I was out there in the throes of my addiction. And I am very blessed to be living the life I am living now. I mean, I'm delighted to wake up in the morning excited, and I am now living a life that is purposeful and more, instead of, it's more a proactive life than a reactive type of lifestyle. Very grateful.
Which is a perfect segue into today's show, which is about a life of zero debt, which is about us taking ownership, getting out of the subtraction that we do in our lives, where we take away and create this negative equity for ourselves, either energetically, karmically, emotionally.
Yeah, the financial is easy to kind of put your thumb on, but it's the spiritual, the energetic, the emotional, the karmic. I mean, these areas are the areas that are. It's not as easy to measure.
But it's behaviors and actions and energies that we do on a daily life that are creating debts we don't want to pay. And when you were in the midst of addiction, you can see that firsthand about how you're doing these certain actions and they karmically don't line up with honoring yourself. And then you pay in your experiences and consequences for it.
Oh, yeah. Horrible. Just horrible, And I've watched people die, from this, the debt is just too much. Couldn't pay it back, I guess. And it's just a horrible, horrific thing to see. There's one thing about somebody dies when they're doing something, they're living life, I know a gentleman who, his helicopter crashed. He wasn't quite the daredevil or anything, but he was on a helicopter ride and the helicopter crashed. And, he died living, this life of, more of in a good place, lined up with who he is and everything. But then you see these people that die from overdose, and that's the real tragedy. People talk about, it doesn't seem like as much of a tragedy to me when people pass away living a life that is in a good place within themselves, because I believe that, they just carry that on until to the what is next. And I have a feeling that, all these people that we mourn for and stuff, I have a feeling if they could talk back to us and they would say, hey, it's all cool, it's all good, don't sweat it, go on, live your life of purpose. because I know that, speaking of this indebtedness, that people feel like they have, that the world has taken something away from them, and they are in a place of lack because of it. I know.
And that's loss you're speaking specifically of, right?
Yes, people attached to the loss of a loved one, their father died when they were young, a mother died when they were young, what have you. They attach to that loss, and they feel that the world has taken something from them, and that they are owed something, or they're in a place of lack.
Well, a great example of, people who have lived a life where they could have felt that way was the founders of Stanford University when their son did die and didn't get to fully actualize the life that they would have liked to see, like we all want to see with our children. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they founded a university, and they became that for all these other people growing up into their adulthood. So what could seem like a place of debt and takeaway and negative equity in our life can really be shifted into this positive ownership and accepting what is and understanding how to build really that positive equity. I'm speaking in terms of financial lexicon, but it's I'm just trying to bridge that gap to understand that all these experiences in all these areas of our lives, whether they're emotional, spiritual, life experiences, is where do we get to this place where we are not having this subtraction, this negative equity build up and create more karmic circumstances that perpetuate this negative debt towards the experiences that we want in our lives.
And there is so much to this that, these people, when they feel in a place of lack, and they try to make up for it somehow using some kind of financial means, like, I have all this stress, I have all this stuff going on in my life, and I know what the answer is. I just need a boat. If I could just have a boat that I could go out on the weekends, then I would be cool. But then you buy the boat, and then there's all the expenses that go with the boat, and there's having to pay for the boat, and that adds more stress to your life. So that's just getting into a place of even further debt. And I don't think that many really understand the cost of stress on you. This cost, stress leads to disease, and people who live a stressful life, they don't typically live as long, or have as as a wonderful life.
So we know a lot of people experience that, definitely. We know this, and we understand this culturally.
Hey, I've been there myself.
With financial debt, that it weighs on us, and it has a deteriorating, diminishing, a disempowering state on us. But if we look at all the areas of our lives where, with our relationships, where we, either someone that we feel has done us wrong in the past, has betrayed us, has been hurtful, or even the daily mundane things where we feel someone owes us something or we owe them something. I mean, these are the areas that we're going to talk about, is these subtle levels. I mean, I know we initially opened up talking about, we can clearly see how this layer of debt could call upon itself from a life of addiction. But let's look at our lives, because those examples are glaring and are easy to identify. But we all have areas in our lives where we are not really in this true power of now. So that's back to my thing about what you were saying with getting a boat. This is not an issue of whether you should get a boat or not get a boat, but how present and in this now is this decision coming from? Or is it coming from a place of lack to substitute or to manufacture a place within us to feel better?
Yes, manufacture. When it's not coming from something that's natural, when you have to do it from a place of force, it's not an ease and flow.
This is what happens with financial debt. It's a manufactured place of trying to create money and wealth that isn't real. So it collapses easy. It's disempowering to us. And the more we put our energies into manufactured ways, we lose our authentic way.
Yeah, we talked about all these different types of debt: karmic, emotional, financial, energetic, and spiritual. But the spiritual, financial, and emotional, and karmic, they all tied into this emotional, energetic debt. Energy is, some say energy is everything. And I know that being in a good vibrational place, energetic place, everything is vibrating all around us. And when we get in tune with that, that miraculous things can happen. And I know that is a huge place of that we can create debt, and it's this pattern of not empowering energy. And it can come in the form of gossip and anger and spitefulness and sadness, but a way that it really gets forced is a bullying. It's a guilting and a shaming. Either we're living in this guilt and shame, or we are
pushing it on someone.
Yeah, we're trying to empower ourselves by bullying somebody else, and that's not always that easy to see, those patterns. They can be very difficult to be aware of this. And, I lived in this state with with my last relationship. There was a lot of guilting and shaming and pushing and bullying and...
all like on a psychological, energetic, emotional level,
yeah,
which is where most of it happens in our culture and our conditioning.
And it can sneak in and like some form of decay, and start to rot the core of a relationship or what have you. This is something that we really need to be aware of within ourselves and when it's happening to us, because I had it subtly start happening to me. And then, but there is, when I look back on it, hindsight is 20/20. They say, this. I look back on it and I could start to see some things. There was. I want to use this example. I think it's important, but I want to make a long story short. So, it's basically there was a time early in the relationship where I knew that I was right, and my partner knew that I was right about that. I was not misguided in
what you were saying.
Yeah, and and my partner said to me, "I can't always be wrong. You need to be wrong on this time." Like it was just kind of this weird kind of like put me back, and then I actually apologized, and I remember I was like, it was like selling a piece of myself to try to just have peace and save our relationship. That's
the manufacturing I was talking about.
Oh, absolute manufacturing.
Is when we have to manufacture this good place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a place that's authentic and sustaining and natural and expanding and organic.
And very unhealthy. Very unhealthy.
So we just look at our lives karmically, energetically, emotionally, with our relationships, with our career, with our purpose. Where are we at? How much of it do we have to manufacture just to psych ourselves up to be okay, make it okay?
Well, in the bigger picture, when you're trying to look at something, you're looking at the scale. Okay, I'm going to lose this woman I love, or I just make this concession, but then these concession or this compromise, just more and more comes into place, and it is like a cancer, or it is like a decay. It spreads and stuff. The loss of self is a terrible debt.
And that's what you had said, Jack, is that you felt like in that relationship, it took a tremendous amount of energy in order for the relationship to sustain or to be in a place of
it was
loving
constant,
exchange.
It was constant work, and it's amazing, how people say all the time that, well, relationships are a lot of hard work, and I'm not buying that anymore. I gotta say, if you're trying to sell that to me, I'm not buying. Anne and I, our relationship is a place of ease and flow, and we just don't subscribe to that hard work, and we don't want to argue. We don't really see the point in that. We don't. We've never had a fight, and we've had strong opinions about things, and we've expressed them in very healthy ways, and we moved on. And it's amazing. It's like I feel like I'm now in like, oh, this is how adults are supposed to act, or something. This is how adults do it, and so much of this arguing and fighting and all that stuff is so petty. It goes down to childlike type behaviors that just are not empowering. And this loss of self, that is when you start sacrificing self, it is a slippery slope. And I had a gentleman pull me into another room at an event I was at and said, "This is not you." And at the time, I really didn't get what he was saying. I really didn't grasp it all, but he was absolutely right. He was like, I had lost myself.
Okay, Jack, so I want to talk to that in people of wherever they're at in their life, because I feel that people can get into these really complicated configurations where the weight of changing it seems too heavy than to keep trying to manufacture making it work.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was at. I made this choice. I somehow made this choice at this time where it's like, oh, okay, I can just appease for the moment to try to save something that's bigger, but it doesn't work on that. It's like sacrifice on any level. It's not healthy, and we're taught like we need to, like there's some kind of nobility in pain and suffering and stuff like that, when it isn't noble. That's not a place. Our purpose cannot line up with pain and suffering, and you don't do losing things to get winning results.
So then tell me how you would then speak to somebody in their lives where, how do they empower themselves? Like the way you empowered yourself, because I think the mistake most people make is they think, well, if this person just changed, if that just changed in my life, you know what? If I just had more money in my bank account, That's
exactly where I was at. It was exactly what I was thinking when this gentleman was telling me about how this is not me, and how I lost myself and stuff like that.
So I want to speak to that then, because people think if just these outside things change, well, then everything would be great. This person would be great. My life would be great. I'd be in love. I'd have all this money in my bank account. I would have. Mm-hmm. So how do you empower somebody to get into that? The thing is that doesn't work, by the way. It doesn't work. Because, we were very wealthy. We were on a cruise and still, in the beautiful area with lobster in front of us and all this stuff. And, we're fighting. See, that's where I want to talk to this place where I think people still displace their power and it's not about, shaking up your whole life and changing everything. It's getting into this good place and being authentic with yourself and getting into this power of now, which is where our access is, and where we hold ourselves to this rising up truth of who we are, and we're not displacing our energy outside of ourselves on a person, on a place, or on a thing in order for us to be okay. Because there is the man who's completely rich and sitting in his mansion, but completely miserable.
Oh yeah.
And there is the person
suicide among wealthy people. You see it all the time. You see these stars that get to the stardom place, and then they're still not good within themselves. I mean, you've got everything, all your dreams started to come true, and now you're going off yourself.
Okay, and then there's the people that are alone, sitting in their place, and if they just had that relationship, this is where they take themselves outside of this access point of now. Because if they just had this great, loving relationship, well, then I would really be content sitting here in my house. Okay, so there's the person who's alone. Now you flip it to the other side. There's the person who's with the marriage and the person, and they're extremely alone, although they're with somebody. So it's like we got to find our access point of now and how to get into this life of zero debt.
Yes.
Where we're not leaning back to the past, we're leaning forward.
Exactly.
To what needs to happen, and we're rising up right in this moment of now. I mean, if there's any core message that I think today's show in this part 2 of a life of zero debt is it begins now. It's the power of right now. Yes,
in honoring the truth of who you are and why you're here, that is it's a spiritual place. It's a connected place. I mean, that is the place of true empowerment. Because when we get off that, we start selling ourselves short on things. That's where we end up way off track. If you're 5 degrees off course, you will never get to that place that you need to be. And the only place, the only way to get that I firmly believe that is to honor who you are and what you're here for, and get into that good place within yourself and start presenting, develop that and present that to the world. And then all these things just start to line up because you're in this good energetic energy. I mean, this energy is this energy that will support you because you live in a supportive universe will come to you, and then things will start lining up, and there is the relationship, there is the financial, there is all these things start lining up. All your stars start to get in alignment when you are at that good place, when you're in the truth of who you are.
Okay, so I'm back to this story you told about when you were pulled aside and speaking to that place for anybody wherever they're at in their life, and you had felt like, because I do feel people are in jobs, but how do I change this? I mean, my family depends on me, but I can't stand it. That's just one example. Not all people are in that place. Or maybe they've invested so much time in a certain career, which is paying them very well, but they're unfulfilled, but it's too complicated to get out of that. And so I feel that people do get into these places where they've lost some part of themselves. They've given that part away, which is a form of a debt. And so Jack,
they can't even have the vision of where they need to go. When there's loss of self and loss of vision and purpose, then
I feel a lot of people are there though. They keep manufacturing, trying to change it. So I want you to say, because I think it's really important that we all have that moment where we defined where we're not living in that debt of this recurring pattern anymore. And for you, it was when the same pattern showed up again, and with your former relationship.
Yeah.
And when that pattern showed up, I think it's pretty powerful. You had made a deliberate decision where you had said...
It was almost beyond a decision. It was like a declaration, that I was no longer going to live my life the way I had been living it.
But it wasn't about her, which is what I want people to get. It became about you and that truthfulness of how life should feel for you.
Yes. I got in a place of honoring myself. I said 2010 was going to be my year. And whatever had to change, I was willing to do. I was willing to go through whatever kind of configuration had to happen, whatever kind of shift had to happen, I was willing to do that. And because that was a place of honoring myself. And I found I wasn't living in a place of guilt and shame, which was very empowering for me. I mean, that was like so much freedom. I had no idea how much weight was on me. was on my shoulder. The weight that I was carrying, the debt, the weight of the debts that I was carrying. And it's amazing. And you talk about giving it back.
In my situation, it was with a whole business conglomerate. It was the exact same energetic dynamics that you described, Jack, with your relationship, where I had felt like I had to keep sacrificing or appeasing for the investment into this bigger picture of what I was doing, which was this whole software business enterprise. And I reached a point where there's a couple of things you said. You talked about if you just shift 5 degrees. See, because I think this is that 5 degrees you're talking about, it could send you down a path you don't want to be, or if you shift another 5 degrees, you can totally get on the path that you're meant to be on. And that's really important, because this is about us pivoting our own orientation with life. It's not about something on the outside needs to show up and make our life different. Mm-hmm. And so I had that same pivot where I shifted, where I came to this place that I realized, I read in the Master Teachings of the Far East that, and this is back to, which is even substantiated in biblical verses, all these universal verses, that, we can surrender things back to God, back to the universe, back to the source of life that is not us. So anything that feels heavy, and that's what I did with this software, is I realized, I don't have to carry this anymore. And this is taking so much energy for me to manufacture this whole thing to work the way it was, and this isn't even the plan I want anymore.
I mean, didn't you feel like you're juggling, you're trying to keep all these balls up in the air? How much energy that takes?
Well, it was a huge amount of weight at that time in my life, and it wasn't even what I wanted, but it was one of these things that I felt like was my ticket to freedom. And once I realized that I am my best ticket to freedom, it's not going to come from anything on the outside, and that I can give anything back. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm giving this back. And actually what I started to do is purge my whole office of all unnecessary paperwork that had to do with this business. I remember just saying, I'm giving it back, and I prepared for the sale of it. And that's what I did, is then I prepared, and the right buyer came at the right time in order for me to give it back to the universe and someone else to carry on with. This is also what happened to me in my marriage and my relationship. It became very taxing, very hard. It was highly compromising to me. And I realized, with the certain level of growth that, my former spouse needed to go through, that I didn't have to be responsible for his growth curve anymore, that God, that the universe, I could give him back to life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big proponent that you can surrender things. But I want to go back to your thing that you were talking about, Jack, with when you made this declaration, then what happens is, and it was about you, then what happens is then when life shows up in these old indebted patterns, mm-hmm. how do we make a shift out of it? And I think there was a really important thing that you had, I always go back to this story that you had said, is that when she came to you and said, I think this and this needs to happen, and it was a lot more of the guilting and shaming and feeling bad in order for her to get you to respond the way that she wants. Mm-hmm. And you had said to her, if we cannot work this out sitting here right now in the next 5 minutes, we're not going to work it out. I think that's pretty powerful, because I think people keep doing the same things, expecting a different result. And within 5 minutes, you said, you know what? This is over.
Yeah.
That's a highly moment of clarity, instead of feeding the debts that we do, and we perpetuate the same trajectory in our lives.
Well, I knew I could no longer live this kind of fractured type of living. This where I was in pieces. And I couldn't carry on that way. So it's, becoming oneness, this becoming whole, this... that's the only place you can have true freedom, is to get yourself whole, heal yourself, get to this place. Because if you're not good for yourself, you're not good for others, so all this stuff about sacrifice and everything, that there is a reason why when the airplane is going down, they tell you to put on your own mask first and then help others. Because if you're not good for yourself, you're no good for others. So it's even like people say, well, I'm going to, sacrifice for my children. And that is so no, I'm going to sacrifice all my hopes and dreams for my children. Well, what are you really doing? You're really teaching your children to sacrifice their hopes and their dreams for some, that there isn't enough value.
It's still a place of debt, which when you say it like that, Jack, sacrificing, it's like, well, I'm indebted now to you in a way that I cannot be free to me.
Because understand that your kids learn from what you do, not what you tell them to do. They learn from the actual actions of what you're doing. So if you're saying, hey, you can be anything you want to be, but then you're in return giving up all your hopes and your dreams, then you're just teaching your children to give up on their hopes and their dreams.
So with debts, it's easy to measure it with money, but let's look at it in the sense of how it's really a shrinking of power. It's a shrinking of ownership. And how do we move into this power position in our lives? By becoming present, by getting really totally aware of how we're influencing in the right here, right now, the direction and orientation of our lives.
And that's where it comes into place where you said not leaning back,
yes,
not leaning forward, being present, and not, we can lean back into these...
the past.
Yeah, negative experiences, resentments, those type of things. Or we can lean forward.
Where we're worrying and anxieties, where we're leaning too forward about our fears over the future.
Oh, that future tripping. Oh, God. I mean, how many things can you go down? I mean, how many things in our lives have we worried about that never happened? And think about all that energy that we spent on all these things of worrying that just never happened. And what if we didn't live a life of fear where we weren't constantly worrying about the future and we were being present? What kind of life would we have then, right? So when we can get ourselves back into the present, back into the now, and that isn't like we don't worry, we don't plan. Yeah, we plan, but then we don't worry about the future. We've made our plans. We're going to stick to our plan unless it doesn't work, and when we'll recalculate and move forward. But we attach all this this emotional debt to this future tripping kind of stuff that we're doing.
Well, then I think, too, is about how often are we always in a place where we're censoring our life from prejudgments, that we're already indebted with our judgments in a way that we can't even receive the richness and the good and the opportunity because we've already prejudged our...
We closed all the windows, we nailed them shut, and now we can't get any fresh air. I mean, it's the thing, and then that is such a huge aspect that we become closed because we become, no, we've done something like that before and it didn't work. No, that we might get hurt doing that. No, we're just going to, we're not going to do that because something could go wrong. Something this, something that, and that's just not an empowering place to be.
Well, this is about getting into our power position, and it's about being aware and knowing when we want to be making these decisions. It's really interesting. If we could take how much of our life energy we are using to lean back in the past and reminisce and repeat and energize and resent and grieve and to be sad and to be unsettled, or we could measure how much we're leaning forward with worry, with anxiety, with prejudging. If we could measure that like we would have, like we could on a spreadsheet, like with money, how much debt would we have? How much takeaway would we have from our power position? I have an interesting story.
Yeah, we'd have to declare bankruptcy.
Right. So then that's
start over. That's
right.
A powerful position. That's what I did. I said, I'm done. And that's what you did. We gave it back.
And so the power position is in the now. But I have an interesting story about realizing this. And I want everybody to get themselves into this really clear state, or look at it in your life, or just become aware, if you just took this one thing with a life of zero debt, is just start following the tracks of your mind and realize it's your mind, it's not you. Because when you start to become the observer to it, you start to unattach and realize it's not you. Because now you can observe yourself doing it. Is how much time are you spending leaning back, and how much time are you spending leaning forward? And understand, every time you do that, you're taking yourself out of this rising up power position of now. So I'm an advocate over journaling, and I've been journaling, when I began out of the artist way, style to unlock creativity. And I had been journaling, maybe a year and a half. I know it was at least a year. And one day I had this most amazing epiphany when I went through and was kind of looking at what I journal about. And it took me a year and a half almost. I know at least a year of this same pattern. I realized every day, every morning, I get up and what I'm journaling about is all about my past and what's happened and me making sense of it and assimilating it. Or it was all about my future, how I needed to fix it and what needs to happen. And it was like, this was this epiphany of like, I've spent a year, at least a year and a half, where every day I start out with this blank page in this journaling, and it's all about leaning in the past or leaning forward. And this was a few years ago that I had this like powerful epiphany of like, is this how I want to be processing my life? Where it's constantly in the past or it's constantly in the forward? Because I know that when we're leaning back or we're leaning forward, just take it from the physics of the body. If you're leaning far, life can knock you over. If you're leaning back too much or you're leaning forward too much, our power position as human beings is in our upright, tall position. That is in our power of the now. This is where, when you look at the chronology of your life, when it's more the horizontal line, when we're looking at life from our age, from the time of the past, from the time of the future, it is this leaning forward or it's this leaning back position, and that is not our power position. Our axis of power is in the now.
I always know that I'm living in the now. I always get this sense of it when I'm truly being present, when I start to notice beautiful things around me. And I just look at, just coming out of the house and getting this breath of fresh air. And just knowing that I just had this breath of fresh air. And just not just running out of the house and, on to whatever I got to do next. But, that's like being present when I'm smelling what's around me. When I'm sensing things around me. When I'm not... not thinking about something else when I'm having a conversation with you, Anne. When I'm really being present. That's a place of real place of ease. When we go to the ocean, and we go there, and I'm listening to the sound of the waves and the smell of what's going on around me, and the feeling of the sand in my toes, stuff, and that is a powerful thing. When I went to, I went up to our cottage at Higgins Lake when I had just gotten sober. So my first summer up there, and I walked down to the beach. And there is just this amazing glow that is coming off of the water. It's like light coming from the lake and generating up, and then the way the sun was starting to set and everything, and I was noticing the sand in between my toes, and how everything started, this feel, and I was like really in that moment. And then I heard something, and I turned and I looked, and there was these two guys down at the beach, and they were not facing the lake. They were facing the other way. They were standing there, swaying back and forth and talking all slurred and stuff, and using a lot of profanity and everything. And it was like, oh, they're missing it. This is what it's about. This is what it's like to live life and not just go through the motions of living life. And I remember thinking that was a really powerful place of enlightenment for me. And I really started to understand about getting into the present.
Well, okay, let's talk about then living in the supportiveness of life, where you don't feel like you have to create these debts. I mean, because that's the thing. People feel like they have to create these debts in order to live a life that has some luxury to it. And what is that luxury I'm meaning? It doesn't matter whether it's the luxury of a relationship, it's the luxury of our needs being met financially, it's the luxury of having a job. It's this place where how do you merge that then, Jack, is what I want to talk about. Is that because I think it's our fear that keeps us, is that for people to realize that the universe will support them. So I want to go back to your story because
fear of losing what we have, fear of losing what,
So we stay indebted.
Yeah.
We stay indebted.
Got to keep all the balls in the air.
Well, and this is the thing that happens in life is that people think that in order to make this change, that they don't understand that it begins on the inside first, and that our finances will reflect that. Well, I'm just going to fix my finances first, and then that'll fix all these other energetic, emotional areas. And so what we're proposing right now in this radio show is you begin to fix that in yourself, and everything else starts to follow and match. And that's what happened to you, Jack. So talk about that again in the beginning, when you completely made your declaration and you changed your whole orientation. You made that shift, which becomes not about this person, this situation. It became about yourself. And just that 5-degree shift in your own orientation completely changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started off 2010 with $3.78 to my name. And I ended up going on 29 flights that year and, flying all over the world and vacationing and meeting the love of my life.
I was putting my arms up in the air for him.
That has been...
It was rich.
Yeah.
That's the point. It was rich. And I think people think that this is the thing I want.
Yes, you got to be rich on the inside before you'll ever get rich on the outside.
And that's the thing, was we are supported. The universe does support us when we make that leap of faith into the true, authentic.
And let me be clear about that, because money might show up in different ways, but you won't sustain it. You won't appreciate it. You won't be in this place of harmony with it. And
if what?
If you're not in that good place within yourself, if you're not rich on the inside, then you can't sustain wealth on the outside.
So that's where the whole core message of today's show is how to become really aware of these areas of debts in our lives, because we are conditioned from the time we're young, and we're living in a consuming conditioning time where we're taught very early on as if we're flawed, something's wrong, and we got to air this wrong in us.
Right. I mean, everything, all the advertising, everything we're bombarded with is, hey, you need to look like Barbie. You need to have long blonde hair. You need to have big boobs. You need to have, guys, you need to drive the fast car. You need to do this. You need to... you need to use Gillette. It's best man can get. Whatever it is, all these things that we're bombarded with, and these messages, and this GQ magazine and stuff, these airbrushed models and everything. Something that it's all showing you that you're not good the way you don't have enough the way you are. You're not enough. You need this. You need X, Y, and Z in order for you to be good.
I thought it was really funny. We just heard someone recently speaking, and he was saying that somehow the barometer that people are, trying to manufacture a life from is beer commercials, like this beer commercial image. And like, we're getting ready to hit the Super Bowl, and it's like, it's like going to this place within ourselves where we're at the truth, and it's a much stronger, authentic, real orientation that's in the power of who we are and who we're meant to be in that good place within ourselves, which is the Empower 11 stance.
Yes, I mean the oneness of who you are on the inside starts to match, gets in congruency with the oneness of the outside, and that's the whole Empower 11 symbol.
That's where your life really does get sexy. Did your life get sexy for you in 2010, Jack?
Absolutely, yes. Very, I mean,
See
what
that?
what a ride it's been since then too. I mean, if you would have told me that back then that I'd be hosting this radio show and I'd be living in California and I'd be flying all over the world and I'd be doing that, I would have said you're out of your head. And writing a book and just amazing. But we live in a supportive universe. We don't need to borrow. It's
we don't need to borrow or owe in order to get right within ourselves.
Right. We need to trust in this. We need to trust that the universe has our back as long as we are in that good place within ourselves. As long as we're in our purpose, then karmic correction will start to come in, and
I like that a lot.
We aren't missing anything. We're not. There isn't something of us that is missing that we can't get back. That we can't. It's there. We just need to find it within ourselves.
Activate it. I love that word.
Wonder Twin Powers activate. Yeah.
Yeah, and how when we begin to activate this is that where latent dormant forces begin to conspire in our favor, and truly miraculous things can begin to show up and happen. But we got to be willing to get into that good, honoring place within ourselves first.
Right, and then, awareness is key, so, when awareness happens, then healing already starts to begin. I mean, it's a natural process. When our body gets cut, our bodies become aware of it, and it sends the right stuff to where we need it to go in order to start the healing process. So, and part of this awareness is an inventory, is actually really taking a look at what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, does this line up, and understanding as far as debts go, what is mine, what isn't mine. A lot of times we take on things that aren't even ours to take on. It's like we're supposed to feel empathy. Right? Like empathy is a good thing, but it doesn't need to hinder our lives. We don't need to be so upset from some tragedy that happened in Europe that it's affecting our state of being as our purpose. We can feel empathy. We can send prayers, and then we still need to be on point with our lives. In the long ago, we didn't have this kind of communication. We weren't up to date. Boom, all of a sudden, we know that there's an earthquake, and we got videotape of it, and we're watching people dying that just died minutes ago and stuff. We didn't have it. We found out about that a month later or 2 months later. We found out there was and we're like, oh, those poor people. I hope everyone's okay.
Well, this is the thing, is those tools of technology and instantness can actually serve us if we're using it to create better connection and not using it as a device of distraction and for disconnection in our own life. I want to talk really quick about this place, about doing this inventory and about getting to this good place and about having awareness and letting healing begin. I think that when we look at our energetic patterns, it was really interesting. And I just want to bring this example out, Jack, because I think a lot of people can relate to this, is that how awareness and healing begins, and this idea of, shame and guilt having this indebtedness factor on us. You said that was a strong dynamic that was used in your previous relationship. And I know in the very beginning how of our relationship, so much of how your dynamic worked is you owed her. You owed her whatever it was to make it work. You owed her an apology. You owed her anything. And I remember in the beginning of our relationship, you still owed her. You were still telling me, well, I'm going to do this to make it right with her on this issue and stuff. And I think it's because, it just bringing an awareness. And that's when you talk about what's mine and what's theirs, is that I remember saying to you, Jack, it's like, all you got to do is clean up on your end of it. And whatever was her contribution for that whole situation, that's her end to clean up. And it's like just that awareness and allowing the healing to begin. And on the flip side, you helped me do that a lot in my own relationship, is that when we created this Take Ownership program.
Yeah.
And I realized I was really surprised at all the work I had done, the debts I was still carrying that pertained to my marriage that I had for 18 years. And then I said to you, gosh, I thought I was really over this, but now this is like I did this whole workshop that we just created, and I realized how much of this still weighs on me energetically. And you said to me, Ann, the awareness of it begins the healing. That freed me up so much, because we think we got to do something. And so this...
We got to be doing. And instead of just allowing ourselves to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. This inventory, I'd like to... when you think of inventory, it's like, oh, I got to go through and I got to find all my faults. I got to do all this stuff. A lot of inventory can just... a daily inventory can be done. Just a nightly reflection before you go to bed on how the day went, and look at what your part in what you're doing and why you're doing it can be very healing and very helpful and really promote awareness. And, look at the time. Are you spending a lot of time because are you spending part of your day or part of your week or part of your month, what have you, because you feel indebted to somebody and you're doing some things to try to pay back some kind of debt? Or are you doing things with your time that is more focused on the here and now and what your purpose is and what brings you fulfillment and what you're passionate about?
This place about your inventory, Jack, I definitely knew that. The ability to do inventory is so important, because our suffering, so much of our suffering comes when we're in other people's business and we're in other people's places and versus in our own, and we can really gain back our own empowerment when we stay in our own business. But you said something when we were creating this whole Take Ownership course that had a profound effect about why inventory is so important, is because if somebody told you why it's so important to taking ownership of our life, is that you said if somebody told you own that building over there, well, the first thing you would do is you'd go over there and you'd assess the inventory. You would assess what is in it. Yep. What is mine and what don't I want anymore that's in this building someone just told me I owned. Mm-hmm. And so here's this building, which is you, your life, your temple, this body that you live in, and all that's attached to it. What is it that's yours that you want to be owning?
Yeah, and what is it that you want to let go of?
That's giving it back to the universe. That's surrendering up. There's so much power in meditation because we can get still, and that's the access of now, which is where we get into this life of zero debt, is getting into this access of now.
We always mention meditation. Whenever we get into the how of something, like how do you, a lot of it is the stillness, is just getting into, it's not doing more, it's doing less. It's not trying to overthink things. It's getting into a place of peace, a place of good vibrational harmony within yourself.
Yeah, you always talk about, Jack, that in Power 11 is so important to portray that message of getting into that good place, and that's the place that meditation promotes. It's this place where we're getting into the universal intercom and prayer zone with our life, and then basically we're like the tuning fork. We're getting into that vibrational harmony so things match up, and we're not in just this pinball reactive kind of state with the world.
And then we can live more in a place of meditation, a place of vibrational harmony. I know my grandfather, he wasn't the type that you would think would meditate, But he would get quiet, and he'd really get into some kind of place with himself. And then he'd also go through his day humming. Like when he was in this good place with him, he would do this hum, and he was like constantly humming. And that is, the humming, the vibration of humming, it kept him in this really good place, and that, I think that had a lot to do with his success.
Yeah, and so on some level, it could be measured where different areas of his life where he was able to live in this life of zero debt. Mm-hmm. I'm going to invite everyone to close out today's show with a short, quick meditation. So wherever you're at, I invite you into this calm, breathing space of the here and the now. I invite you into this place of a life with zero debt, the place that exists where you influence directly change in the world around you. It happens in this moment of now, your true access of power, the connection to your true self, where your real power resides, where you rise up in the inner depth of who you are to allow your outside world to become a matching and rapport experience, where you no longer disempower yourself by leaning into your past or leaning forward into your future, but you reside in the here, in the now, in that tall and strong position of the Empower 11 stance, where getting into that good place of who you are lines up and matches with the world you want to create out into the world.
Very nice, Anne. Very nice. So I would like to invite you to share this show. If you got something out of this, please share it with the people that you love and you care about, and also some of the other shows. We've done shows on resentments, and we've done some really, I think, really worthwhile and shows that are really worth sharing, and
they're changing lives.
Yeah, and the feedback that we are getting is really powerful, and it really makes me feel fulfilled. When we hear back from you, the listener, that hey, this helped me, hey, that helped me, hey, I shared this with somebody and it helped them, and then that just helps us to keep making these shows and keep making them the best that we can be. And I just want to end the show by saying that you are important. That there is no mistake while you are here. You are here for some reason, and the power that you have to influence your own reality and empower other people in their reality is immense. Get into that good place with yourself. Get into the Empower 11 stance, and it will empower you. And I invite you to have an empowered week, and we will see you next week on this same place, this 11 a.m. Pacific time, Wednesday, live. We will see you then. Empower 11 Radio.